Hey, what's everybody? We had some pregame talk here I found pretty interesting. We had Hall Pass. We had something about Mary. Now, as the staff was talking, how did the something about, how did Hall Pass with you and Johanna even come up? How was that even possible?
Well, as a disclosure, in case my wife ever listens to this, it's just we were joking around one time thinking, well, what would be a hall pass for us if we ever stepped out of line that we could be forgiven? And it was just like a joke. And for me, I said, well, it's Holly Berry, because I think she's absolutely gorgeous. Even till today, she's just stunning. My wife picked, and thank God, she picked Anthony Hopkins, because she just loves him as an actor. But in the last year, and I was sharing this with Aaron a few minutes ago, that Henry Cavill became her new, she just loves this guy, thinks he's gorgeous. And I said, you're not allowed to change. We've locked those in years ago. But then Erin got super excited, and she said, you know what? I never thought about who mine would be until you just said that. She said, I'll fight your wife for him. So that's how we got on the subject. And
it's interesting. Hall Pass seared a memory into my memory forever. And there's a bathroom scene, for those of you who want to Google that, do that all on your own. But that's like scarred me for life, with that memory. I think I was actually still single maybe when I saw that movie, right? So long time ago. My wife and I, we never did a Hall Pass. And I'm very glad, because last weekend at Mar-a-Lago for the Make 22 and Again charity event, we met some superstars, right? Cole Hauser from Rip from Yellowstone, Kevin Sorbo, Hercules, right? And who else? Colby Covington is going to fight for the title in London with the UFC, right? And so there's some pretty big names. Of course, Trump's sons were there, and Trump spoke, and it's just fascinating. I'm glad we never did that, though, because in that chance, we might have started running into some of those people. I think the life we lead now, we kind of run into that stuff, but pretty crazy. That charity meant a lot to me. Those of you who haven't seen a clip from when we shared and talked at that, it was big, right? I received a Patriot Award for Florida given to me by Congressman Mills, which was pretty cool. So it was a lot of fun. But if you ever want to meet like different superstars, who would you want to meet?
Me? That's a great question. I never thought about that. You just threw that one at me. Let's see. Who would I would love to meet Donald Trump, only because I think he's such a charismatic individual. I know a lot of people they can feel divisive over him, but I just think the guy stands for what he believes, and he's not afraid to take the criticism. So I love that about the man. Who else would it be? And again, Hollywood.
But
Kevin Sorbo would be a pretty good one. I like him.
He was so much fun. Great golfer. He's like a scratch golfer, right? He just decent guy, right? Talking through, we played 18 holes of golf together. So, and my golf was terrible and his golf is great. So, what that can come with, a lot of judgment by the end of the day. So, but it was great. But, the thing was for me, and I had these conversations last weekend, right? I can sit here and say, like, anybody who's been our president for 4 years, right? And when Biden's done, I'll say the same thing about him, that we still exist as a country afterwards and we haven't been blown to kingdom come. I have crazy, insane respect for their ability to hold it down, right? And I think that's something, that foreign powers would love for us to fight all the time, right? And it's one of the beautiful things I saw in some of the transitions with Obama and Bush, and some of those transitions were like they respected the other side when they transitioned. I'd love for us to be able to get back to that somehow here in America, because our president's our president, right? So for 4 years, you better give him, right, the support that you can give him, and then let go of it, right? But for me, it's because I'm pretty non-political, right? I have a lot of beliefs on the right. I have some beliefs on the left, and a lot of stuff runs right down the middle, and I'm really a libertarian more than anything else. So, for me, it's about that part of it. But the reality is, for these people, they get so angry and so fired up, right? I can't even think of who I would love to meet, right, that is out there that's a superstar. Joe Rogan, for me. I love to meet the guy. I love to hear him. Like, I've seen his career and I've seen his journey, and I just think to be in that much variety of success, right, and then to be dedicated to a craft like being a comedian, that discipline that it takes, it kind of blows my mind a little bit. That one would be for me. I don't know how many times I would fan guy or fangirl, right? I'd be a groupie, right, when it came to seeing somebody, but probably Rogan's probably one of them for me. So. Yeah. Who else for you?
Another one just popped into my mind is I was talking about him just the other day. Is Chuck Norris. Mm-hmm. My daughter was telling me yesterday she saw Chuck Norris at some Comic-Con or some event, and I'm like, Chuck is just a stud. I remember watching him in Return of the Dragon when I was a kid, He was a stud.
Yeah,
then.
when him and Bruce fought, it was.
Yeah, that's right. He and
pretty
Bruce Lee,
insane.
famous fight. But obviously Bruce died in his 42 years old. Chuck is in his 70s, well into his 70s, and he's still a stud.
Yeah, what was the movie that came out with Brad Pitt and not that long ago, and Leonardo DiCaprio, where they had the Bruce Lee scene in it, where they're the bodyguards. Once Upon a Time, right? So you guys who don't know our team here, right? We got Erin, right? She's on the computer. Zach's on the keys with the cameras and stuff, so that you might hear them chirp or share once in a while. And then my man Alex is on the phone creating. Are you going Facebook Live or what are you doing, man?
Just clips.
Just clips. Every time I ask Alex a question, he gets super red and embarrassed too. It's pretty fun. We should turn the camera on him. But all right, so let's talk about some of the topics, right? We've had all these. We engaged, right, some different PR agencies because we wanted to see what was out there, what exposed, what are people wanting to find out, what are people wanting to know, right? And a big topic right now is foreclosures. You and I have been around the foreclosure game, right, for a very long time, and I've seen many cycles on it. What are your thoughts on the game right now?
Well, listen, I got to tell you, I go back to 2008-ish, 2009. I invested literally $150,000 into an apartment complex with a group of other people, which was a great deal. The problem is there was some fraud that happened, and we wound up losing the whole thing because of the entire housing collapse that happened. So, again, I've been listening to you now for a while, and some other authorities who have been kind of sounding the warning, saying, look, you just can't be sustainable for such a long period of time. And I know that over the last couple of years, I've attended lots of events that involve real estate investors. And literally, and I say this with great respect, you didn't have to be that smart to make a lot of money in real estate over the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. The people who are the smartest made a lot of money, but you could dabble in it and still do really well. I think right now we're looking at that shift where the people who are strong, who really know what they're doing, are going to be able to do extraordinarily well because they position themselves in advance. And I know RADD is one of them. Get cash on the side. They were ready because we're seeing now a change in the foreclosure market. We're seeing more coming on. Now, again, we have an internal staff here, right, that's keeping an eye on what current events that are happening. And last week, Bloomberg came out with that there's a 22% default rate right now of foreclosures going on, and I think that's only going to increase.
Well, I think there's a lot of things people don't talk about, right? There's parts of the statistics that people don't understand, and there's parts of the game people don't get. So if you go back to 2020, right, that's when us at RADD, we grabbed a huge market share, right? And that's when times were tough, times were tight, when the pandemic hit, and we grabbed a huge market share. Here in 23, I feel like we're going to do the same thing. And the reason is because we've been preparing for this for the last 2 years and getting ready. So last week on Friday, we closed a 28 deal short sale. Now, the last short sale I closed, I want to say was 2011 was the last short sale I closed. So a 28 deal short sale kind of blew my mind that we had done that. So a short sale, for those of you who don't know, is when somebody owes more money on a property than really what it's worth. And so you negotiate a discount with the bank, and it keeps somebody from going through a foreclosure. And it can help them repair their credit. It can help them improve their credit quicker afterwards. And so it's a healthy game. And so the first course I ever wrote actually was Short Sales Unleashed, and it was good. It was a negotiation service for residential short sales. But then in 2010, I wrote a commercial short sales manual, and I wrote that was pretty intense. So I feel like we're going there again. 6 months ago, I was reading a USA Today article, and we were going to post this article, right? So sorry for the economics, the economists, the people that were a part of this article, right? So I read an article in USA Today, and they were talking about no foreclosure wave. They're talking about foreclosures weren't going to hit the market. And I said, these are the same people that caused Zillow to lose $500 million, right? People with degrees working at big companies who haven't ever bought a foreclosure. People with degrees from big companies that have never been through multiple economic cycles in their lifetime to see what comes and what happens. Because in 08, I wouldn't have seen this, right? In 08, I didn't understand. In 2007, 2006, I didn't get the signs. But now having been at this, 15 years, I saw the signs. So we'll also post a link to that video where I kind of poke those guys a little bit and say, hey, they're wrong. Because we know it's coming. So why is it coming? It's multiple reasons. One is the market has shifted with the interest rates increasing. So the biggest savior of people who are going into foreclosure is to be able to refinance, right, and pull cash out so they can make payments. Or number two is ability to sell. And so because people's monthly payments are now higher because of increased interest rates, they can't sell and they can't refinance. And so that one is a part of it. And then number 3, the next biggest reason is because all the foreclosures that didn't happen for 2 years of the pandemic are now happening. And there's this ton of people that have really didn't make payments that probably maybe could have made payments during the pandemic. Because here's the thing I found over the years of foreclosure and even in rental situations. If people get away with long enough not being forced to be accountable and make payments, then eventually they get used to it and they just think it's the way the system is supposed to work and supposed to be. And that's not the way the system is built or the way it should be, right? I don't want to live in a socialist country. I don't want to live in a communist country, right? And I believe if people make a commitment, they sign a contract, they should honor that contract. I also believe when people need help, they should get help. But if at the same time, that doesn't mean help forever, right? People have got to be able to stand on their own 2 feet as well. So some balance there when it comes to the foreclosure issue, but it's also healthy. What a lot of people don't understand is a foreclosure is a healthy thing in America that people don't fully understand. Like, people pass away, properties don't get passed on the right way. People get into situations where they can't make payments right. And what happens if those properties aren't foreclosed on and aren't moved on, neighborhoods fall apart, neighborhoods are boarded up, right? And if the cost of construction is too much to rehab those, then those neighborhoods will stay boarded up forever. So the thing about foreclosure is it creates a new initiative. It creates a new action, right, in the market. And so now a property that's dilapidated, delinquent, not being managed effectively, correctly, right, can go through a foreclosure. And you know, a lot of people instantly go to foreclosure. They're like homeowners, right? They're like the average homeowner, right? What people aren't thinking about is like we close a 28 deal short sale. That's not from a homeowner, right? That's from a business owner. That's from somebody who's bought a ton of real estate, not managed it correctly, not done it correctly, right? The biggest write-off in America is 1.7 billion, right? That is coming from, right, some of the biggest companies in the world. I mean, 500 million was Zillow. I mean, that's not a normal person, right, that is causing the market. So definitely can be there. So it lets a controlled burn happen when foreclosures happen the right way. But what else for you, man, on the foreclosure thing?
Yeah, well, I know that being around a lot of real estate investors, you just described where they got caught short. If they were leveraging themselves by buying a lot of properties, they were buying a property what they thought was a discount, but now you can't get people qualified to buy the property because of the interest rate changes. Now the investor gets stuck holding the property for a longer period of time. They find themselves in a losing situation. So there's that, again, you just described the situation where somebody got themselves in a pickle, and it created an opportunity for RADD to come in and create a win-win situation.
You know, it's interesting because as I see foreclosures continuing to increase, right, part of it also is just bad buying, right? In 2021, in 2022 early, bad buyers were rewarded. And if you're going to be a real estate investor, buying retail, buying at market price is a mistake. And if you don't understand, the only way you can buy, right, at market prices is if you get to be able to add value, right, or you're in such an appreciation area that you know you're going to be able to turn it before the market changes. But if you're making that guess, you're asking to get burned, right? And for every person that makes that guess and gets into it, there's another one that got burned. And so that's what happened in 2008. It's again happening in 2023. And so for us, you know, we started decreasing our buy box, right? Making sure that we bought at a steeper and steeper discount early in 2022 and making those changes. So for us, there was a couple months where we didn't buy. Now, we bought the most houses in the history of our company, right, in 2022. And what kind of blows my mind is that's was spending, I think, 3 months. We bought hardly any houses at all. And then we put our buy box to a point where like it had to be the most incredible, 30% under market value for us to be able to even consider buying at one point. And so, it's kind of a little mind blowing but people can't adjust. They can't shift and change. But really, that's success, right? Adjusting, shifting, changing. We talked about Rogan earlier, but Dana White said in 2020, he's like, I'm going to run all over the competition. Right, all those who get shy, get scared during the pandemic, he's like, I'm going to run all over them. And I breathed that into my own soul, right? The last 3 years too, for sure. How about where you saw in 2008 to 2012? How do you see this different than that run during that period of time?
I think the banks are a little bit more savvy right now. They've made better loans. Regulations came in, and I think they're looking ahead. And one of the things I love about RADD and the way you think is that you don't skate, and I'm using Wayne Gretzky's famous quote, you don't skate to where the puck is at, you skate to where you know the puck is going. And banks, I think, got a little bit ahead of that. So in this situation, this time around, it's not going to be because people were given loans on properties that they did not qualify for.
Yeah.
Right now, the circumstances that are going to cause defaults. And again, you described one that's really powerful, because I was listening to the news the other day, and they were having a discussion. I think it's in Oregon, Portland area, where there were landlords testifying because in that state, which is a fairly liberal state, about extending the eviction for people that were tenants. And there were two different, opinions on that, where the tenants are saying, well, and this was a group that was representing African-American poor people, saying no one's here to help us. But the people on the other side were a lot of African-American landlords were saying, hey, 2 years people were getting money from the government, going out, buying new things, doing stuff, but not paying us. When is it going to stop? And when are we going to be able to get back? Because a lot of landlords, one of my friends is an expert in this area, and he said, you've got landlords during the COVID period, that are down 50% of the income they should have received. And now as things lighten up and they can evict, they're still going to force a lot of these landlords to go into a foreclosure situation or to be able to get rid of their properties at deep discounts.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to be, greedy, right? But for me, landlords, right, that are beginning to lose portfolios is something we're heavily looking at, right? We were constantly analyzing, larger deals and deals across the board. And for me, it's one of the great places where we can buy, right? I don't wish that upon any landlord, right? But if you don't make the payments and you don't pay the bank what they're owed, then the foreclosure is what happens. And so for us, that's something we're constant. Landlords who told us to piss off 12 months ago on offers we made are now calling us. Yeah. And it's kind of shifted the game in a lot of ways.
Yeah. One of the things I love about the way you and RADD does business, when I started first investing in real estate and learning about it, I had to overcome that mindset of, well, am I taking advantage of people if I buy their properties and they're in trouble? Am I an opportunist in a bad way? But the reality of it is, it's a win-win situation. It's finding out, and I listen to you talk about this a lot. You're always interested in helping the other party. In other words, if RADD can come in and it's a win-win situation, you're all over it. But if it's a win-lose situation, I think you're a little bit more hesitant to get involved in that.
Yeah. There's an article that came out about us about being a bad landlord, right? And I want to say it was 2021, maybe 2020, right? And they went to some tenants who hadn't been paying rent, and we needed to make some repairs to the property. And one of the properties they complained about, they wouldn't give us access, right, to be able to make it. And for me, it was so frustrating because a lot of the landlords we're buying, portfolios from now, right, aren't great landlords. And we work our ass off to be a great landlord, right? Our team dedicates themselves to be a great landlord, and so it kind of sucks in that situation. And when I look at that dynamic, it's a delicate balance, right? For us, a lot of landlords didn't work through payment plans with tenants. We worked through payment plans with tenants. A lot of landlords didn't help their tenants get access to their government assistance and help them know what they could get access to and stuff. And those are things that we did right during. I got foobarred.
It's
all right.
Really on silent too, so I don't
Yeah.
know why.
Well, alarms will do that anyways. So for us, during the pandemic, it was something we did again and again and again, right? And so for me, I look at, even one time we exchanged a billboard on a wall that one of our tenants painted, right, for rent, and it's pretty cool painting, by the way. And so for me, it's whether you choose to be an asshole or you choose to be a decent human being, right? Yeah. Being a decent human being doesn't mean that you shouldn't, hold people accountable. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't be able to do business and do business the correct way, but it also means not being an asshole, right? It means like not, punishing people for what they can't control in this world. And so the pandemic was nothing anybody could control. And so for me, working with him, working through it, right, is the best of situations, that we could make the best of what was a difficult, ugly, crappy situation in places like LA, Chicago, New York, right, Portland, right? It's worse there, right? In those locations, like we run in here, like I moved to Florida. And here in Florida, you literally forget that COVID even exists. It's a non-issue. But I fly across the country and I'm in different cities, and it's a real issue for people still. There's people still wearing masks every single day. There's people still getting the next, booster shot and those kind of things every single day. And so like it kind of depends on where you live a little bit, what the reality is versus not reality. And I have empathy for anybody who lost a relative or anybody who went through difficult times during the pandemic, because like one of the companies we recently invested into, Kombucha Town, right? They took kind of a beating during the pandemic, and there were some difficult times. And I hear Chris's story, and I hear him talk about, and he lives up in, I want to say Seattle or Portland, that's one of the two, and their company, and so I hear his story, and sometimes I'm like, Chris, stop talking about how the pandemic was a struggle for Kombucha Town. But then I go back to the reality of like, okay, first of all, don't be an asshole, Dutch, right? Second of all, let's have empathy. But third of all, like, I have to hold him accountable. I'm like, that's not an excuse going forward, right? Yeah. If you're going to succeed in business, you can't make excuses. You make excuses in business, you fail. That's just flat out. You want to fail in business, make excuses. Come up with reasons why you can't succeed. Come up with reasons why something's working against you. The moment you do that, you will absolutely fail.
Yeah, it's playing the victim.
Yeah, and I
playing the victim doesn't work for me. Yeah. So going back to, I want to make sure that everybody listening to this understands that there are landlords. There's been a stereotype, right? The slum landlord, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't care about the properties, doesn't care about the people.
And they
just wants
exist.
to make the money. They do exist.
They do exist.
But I got to tell you, I've been in this business now for a good 15 years, and I have met thousands of landlords. And I haven't met but maybe a couple of what I would consider slumlords. Most of them take pride in keeping their properties in good shape. Mm-hmm. Selecting good tenants, but every once in a while, listen, I was a landlord for a lot of years. Sometimes you get a bad tenant. That's a nightmare for you. And
you know where
everybody else the opposite.
You know where I'm least likely to do a great rehab, or least likely to do an incredible, right, to take a rental to a pearl? Luxury real estate, right? I'm least likely, if I'm selling a home or I'm going to rent out a big luxury property, a more expensive property, I'm actually less likely to do more effort into that than I am a property in a lower middle class or rougher neighborhood. And here's the reason why. Wealthy people are going to do what they're going to do with the property anyways, right? They're going to want to bring in the carpets they're going to bring into, they're going to put the paintings on the wall, they're going to put a bidet in the bathroom instead of a normal restroom. They're going to do the things they're going to do anyways, so I don't overdo it. When we do our residential properties, right, our more local properties, I want a better product than my competition. So I want it to look like something that I'm going to go retail sell. And not everybody agrees with that, right? But that's my way of, and then I find you get better renters who last longer, who pay better rent, and you get less complaints and less extra work. It's just a better product.
Yeah, that's one of the great, I think, advantages of the alternative investing side, that you really have developed in probably a leading role in this area. And that is, how can you do things better and give other people an opportunity to share in the hard work and the brilliance of a team you bring to the table?
Well, fractionalized ownership is fascinating, right? It's something that a lot of people don't talk about. They don't understand. It's not taught and educated as we grow up. Fractionalized ownership isn't this topic that you're even taught in school, right? I went to business school, right? The bottom line is the ability for you to own a small part of a whole, right? And be able to make the same amount of money as the people who have the money to be able to buy the whole, right? Makes a big difference. Now that kind of probably got a little convoluted, right? But essentially, it's instead of being able to buy $1 million home, not everybody can do that, but everybody, right, can put $1,000 or $10,000 or $100,000 into buying a percentage in ownership in that $1 million home. Well, if you look at 2022, 2021, the homes that appreciated the fastest, right, were your homes anywhere from like 700,000 to about $1 million too. And most of those types of homes even doubled in value in the last 3 years, which is pretty mind blowing. So if your ability to be a fractional ownership, when we went and bought our first 454 acre farm, and then a 1,600 acre farm, and then another 700 acres, and ended up with 2,700 acres in Idaho. It's like an $8+ million total purchase. Who, as a normal individual, one, would make that decision? Number two, putting the money together to be able to do that. Number three, all the risk and the reward there, is significant. And so for us, having 100 or 500 or 1,000 investors, right, and do a deal like that with us makes sense. And now it appraised for $24.5 million. But as an individual, everybody says, well, if I could invest $8 million, I could get a property that could sell for $24.5 million. Everybody would want to do that. But not everybody can come up with $8 million. even myself, I'm a very, very wealthy man. But if tomorrow you said, Dutch, come up with $8 million for a property, I would go and get investors. I would go bring people together, and I would go and pull all that again. Because where's my money at? My money's invested, right? I keep my money in real estate. I keep it making a return. I keep it coming back. Yeah, there's emergency money, which I think is important. But besides that, I keep my money working at the end of the day.
I think one of the big words that a lot of people don't understand is leverage, right? And it was always in my world growing up that the people who eventually worked hard long enough, saved enough money, and then grew it, then they could take that money, invest it, and leverage it.
Well, I like the word leverage, though. Leverage is different than debt. So a lot of Americans get very guilty about debt, credit repair companies. And, if you're using debt to be able to live, right, there's a problem. But if you're using debt to make you money, I don't think that is a problem. Now, there will be experts out there, right? Says, look, somebody gets a home equity line of credit at 5%. Now they take that money and they go and invest it, right? No financial advisor, I think, in the history of America has probably ever given that financial advice to somebody. But I look at what I know, right? The worst investments that I see do better than 5%. And so the ability for you to put money to work for you is huge. But the best piece of leverage and debt being put to work for you is in home ownership, right? For me, the American dream is alive. And I know that is a challenge for a lot of people, but the ability, to be able to put 1% down, 2% down, 3% down on a home. I mean, even on a $500,000 home, 3% is only $15,000. But a lot of loan programs these days get people all the way down to 1%, which is $5,000. So then the question comes back to, can you make the payment or not make the payment? I don't know about you, but it took me a long time to be able to save, pinch, put away, to get to a point where I had $500,000 invested of my own money and my own capital. I don't know how long it took you, but it took me well into my 30s, right? And I could say my companies were worth more, or my real estate, but to have my own money invested, it took me a long time. And so the question is, you go buy a $500,000 home and you're at 97, 98% leverage. Now you have $500,000 appreciating, increasing in value. People are like, well, what if your home loses value? Well, that is a part of not buying for the dip, right? A lot of people buy and they're worried about the market up or down. If you buy for the long term in real estate, you will always win. For the rest of your life, you will win. And I don't know a single person who owns real estate who doesn't believe that.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I've watched over the years people make the mistake of thinking, and again, I'm going to go back to your book, the Money Shackles, right? Because you actually really opened the subject up. And I've got to say, I have to admit, it made me rethink my position on debt. Not that I was a big Dave Ramsey fan. I like Dave Ramsey. I think he's a really brilliant dude.
I think he's done a lot of good in the
He's
world.
helped a lot of people, especially people who don't have the discipline to work their way out of using debt poorly. Right? And essentially, he's essentially a person that just keeps people from getting into that situation. You and I, and hopefully the people listening to this, are going to be in a different situation. Because if they read this book, they're going to realize that there's a smarter way of using debt to your advantage, about leveraging it, right?
I mean, I like to believe that Dave Ramsey's beliefs were built on a traditional system of the past, right? And the traditional system of the past also does work, right, today, because everything cycles around. Like bill bottom jeans, like they come back around like every 15, 20 years. And I'm sure Dave's worn some bill bottoms before, right?
Yeah, I have, definitely.
If I'm going to say something contrary to you, Dave, I'm going to joke around a little bit. But, for me, I wasn't willing, when I looked at Dave's system, I wasn't willing to wait 10, 20, 30, 40 years, right, to achieve wealth. And that's my own impatience as a person. That has nothing to do with whether his system works or doesn't work. I have a more of an accelerated belief with it, but I also believe that when the Bible says, right, it says, I'd be terrible at quoting. I'm literally going to have somebody look it up to get the quote perfect, right? But it says, don't be a slave to the lender, right? It doesn't say don't be a slave to debt. Maybe it does say don't be a slave to debt, but if you're not a slave to it and the debt works for you, you're not a slave, right? The debt becomes your slave. And the moment you can make your debt become your slave, you can make the debt go to work for you. Now the game has shifted. Now the game has changed. And Americans can put debt to work faster for them. The average American can put debt to work for them faster than they can take income away from, right, their lifestyle to be able to do it. Now, I also believe in living within a budget. I also believe that. But, man, how many Americans are struggling to live in any kind of budget that exists?
Yeah, I think the book is really clear. Sometimes we use the word debt, we think negative, right? But in your book and in your system, it's about how do you take the positive side of debt. In other words, you're saying don't be foolish and borrow money. Let's say you don't go to a bank and get a let's say a
I'll tell you, in 2008, I wish every house I had owned, every house that I was involved in 2008, I wish I had done everything in my power, right? I wish I wouldn't have sold some of those houses, right? I would have done everything in my power to keep all of them, even keep more of them, right? And continue to pay the monthly payments on them. Because for me, I sold many houses at a discount. I was, for me, what I didn't understand was the overall game. I was in my 20s still. I didn't understand the overall game, but I was aggressively playing the game, right? Not everybody can aggressively play the game, and that's what I love about putting the debt to work for you, because it allows you, as long as you can make the payments and it can stay within a certain amount of lifestyle, then it goes to work for you forever, and you can be passive in it, and that's pretty cool. But I'm a big disagreeer. My father-in-law was on me forever, right? Good old Ernie, right? He's loved me and hated me over the years, and I think he really does love me. I say that genuinely if Ernie watches this clip, but he's on me forever to buy my own house. Dutch, you got to buy your own house. Ernie, I own 10 houses. For me, buying a house and then putting it to work as a rental is much more valuable than buying and owning and living in your own house. And I think, there's some experts that would probably disagree with me on that one. But to me, the ability to have someone else paying the rent, the ability to have someone else, right, causing that appreciation to grow for me is much more valuable, right, than me owning my own house. But also to me, the risk is far smaller, right? When I owned my first houses, I wasn't married yet. When I owned my first houses, right, I wasn't in a situation where I needed to expend an expensive lifestyle. For all I needed, at that age, I could have lived in a closet for all it mattered, right? And I would have been fine, But for me, I made enough money where I could go buy my first $300,000 home, right? And so that $300,000 home, now a renter goes and pays me $1,500, $1,600 a minute, was covering 90% of the debt on the property. So the real risk to me was to make up a couple $100 a month. Now I have $300,000 working for me. Well, at 27 years old, it would have taken me a long time to get $300,000 working for me.
Yeah, I think there's a mind shift that hopefully a lot of people are going to go through. Reading the book is definitely going to create a mind shift for a lot of people, but also the current market. Mm-hmm. I mean, if there are people listening to us right now, we're talking about foreclosure, and it's increasing, but there are going to be a lot of millionaires.
But how do you win?
There's going to be a lot of millionaires made during this time. Mm-hmm. I heard this years ago, and I was in practice early on. I remember this saying, said, the people who have the cash, the money, during difficult times are the ones who get the wealthiest. And I almost, because of my training, my mindset back then was, well, that sounds like bad. But
I think that's one of those popular statements, right? But for me, I didn't achieve wealth, right? During like I've achieved wealth throughout a lifetime, right? So it wasn't during the pandemic that I achieved wealth. It was the preparation towards the pandemic, right? But then during the pandemic, it was the actions and the moves that we made that then in 21, 22 caused the acceleration for our business, right? We 10x'd our business, right? We were about between $20, $30 million in assets in 2019 and 2022, right? We crossed into 200 million in assets. But it was all the work and all the time, right, to get there prior to that time. And then it was the time after, right, where we reaped the rewards from the actions we took during it. And so, but I think there's a lot of cool statements people say, but when you're living it every day, there's a little bit more to that. Just like, there's more to the foreclosure talk, right? Than it just, it's because of interest rates, or it's because of Biden, or it's because of this, or it's because of the economy. There's a whole ton of factors that go into that stuff.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to just a minute for the fractional ownership, because I want to make sure people really understand this. And because it's so brilliant that a company like RADD, who goes out there, and you've got a brilliant team. You got a lot of great experts on the ground, from the farming. I met Dusty, and he's just brilliant in his team. To your brother Dory, doing single family houses, an entire host of individuals we have here that are out doing the work. I think that's the real power for a lot of people who don't have the ability to go out and do what you described before. They don't have that $8 million, or they don't have the $300,000. They don't have access, maybe don't have the right credit for it, but they do have $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 saved up. How do they gain, or how do they get in a position where they can begin to accelerate their growth, compound
Yeah, I mean,
their money.
our smallest investor put in $1,000, right? That's a common smallest investment with us at RADD companies, right? Now, our biggest investors, right, put in millions. So last year we raised, a little between our different sources and different companies, we raised over $90 million. Now, with $90 million, there just becomes a machine that is almost impossible for an individual to be able to do. But that $1,000 investor, right, reaps the exact same reward as a multi-million-dollar investor reaps with us, right? Now, I'm going to say this, right? The multi-million-dollar investor is going to make a lot of money, right, when their stock price increases, or they're going to make a lot of money when we buy a piece of real estate with them and we sell a piece of real estate, right? When those things happen, they make money, right? So since I started going down the securities talk, we're on the podcast, I got to do the quick disclosures, right?
Amen.
Past performance doesn't indicate future performance, right? When I'm hypothesizing, we're hypothesizing, right, what potential is, right? We have a long track record history of what we are. We're not attorneys. We're not accountants and tax consultants. We'll tell you what we know, what our experience is, within this forum for business and stuff. And we're not selling any securities, right, during this podcast, right? But who do you want to learn from, right, when we're doing podcasts and stuff? And that's the part that's hard for me, right? And I'm working through, right, growing, right, as a person who has a SEC publicly qualified company, right? But in being a thought leader at the same time, because a lot of things I want to tell people sometimes as a thought leader, we get handcuffed, right? Because it can cross those security lines. And so, I mean, I know Elon Musk struggles with some of the things he says, but I think sometimes he's so big he can just provoke them, right? For me, I'm like, if I say something I think they're going to be bothered by, I'm like, shit, right? Because for us, even though we're a pretty big company compared to a small individual, right? Compared to the regulatory bodies, we don't have any push or sway with them. We just need to adhere and listen and do our best to stand by the rules and stuff. So, all right, I got down a sidetrack there. We love you people at the SEC. You're incredible. We appreciate how you protect investors. All right, next subject.
You do a great job of actually hiring really strong legal firms and other firms to make sure the company's compliant.
We do.
Because I want to make sure this is a point that people get, that here at RADD, the concern about crossing the T's and dotting the I's and making sure everything is done right to protect all the investors is something that really weighs heavily on you and Amy.
Yeah, it's a big topic, right? Even like tonight, we're having a REIT call, right? For potential new investors, there'll be a ton of existing investors on there, and that call will be tonight. And we're reviewing the decks, and we have the decks have the what we'll share tonight, right? And I'm like, let's really just reduce the deck down. Let's go to Q&A, right, with the investors quickly, and let's share the important information that we have to, but it has to be reviewed by our internal compliance, it has to be reviewed by our internal legal, right, before it can even come back, through our graphics team for us to be able to share it with the world. Sometimes I'd rather just do no PowerPoint at all and just let people ask Q&A the whole time. But I think there's certain things people need to see, the reality of the truth. So.
Okay, so let me go back and kind of recap, because I think it's, for me, it's keeping track of things is really important. We started out talking today, about our hall passes, so that's not really a big topic for us right now, but we entered into the discussion of the current market right now that we're seeing, and we're entering into, I think we're just seeing the beginning of it. We saw last week 22% foreclosure rate. It's going to get more, which is going to open up the doors for RADD to be able to grow and leverage.
It's mind blowing though, because so many smart people acted after the markets. Like I know you're smart. I know you're smart investors. I know you've got these degrees, and I know but maybe they've just never been in the streets. They don't have street smarts, right? Like a good friend of mine, actually, Lou Brown. He's a residential real estate guru. I know you know Lou, right?
I know Lou, yeah.
Mr. Yeah Baby, right? But he's got amazing residential real estate education, right? Lou's a great guy, but like street smarts, like you don't go buy at the end of hyperinflation $1 billion worth of real estate, right? You just don't. And like those are things like, but even in crypto, like how many companies, right, where crypto had been on this forever run, went and dropped billions of dollars, right, into crypto. Like at some point in time, they got to know that there's market cycles. Like I'm not a market genius, but I know that there's market cycles.
Yeah, amen. One of my buddies, Eddie Speed, talks about, and this is what has gotten a lot of people to where they're at right now, and they're going to go through some financial challenges right now that we'll be able to actually help them out with. He calls it the greed gland. It kind of swells up, and that's what happens. Smart people sometimes suspend their smarts because sometimes greed. Listen, I've been there. Right? You get a little bit hungry, a little bit more greedy for that next deal because you're doing well, and they fail to see what's coming around the corner. And you guys did not do that. You looked at the signs, and again, I don't know how many months ago that you.
I don't know, but it's weird though. It's like, for me, as I've achieved more success and more wealth, right? I wouldn't say I've gotten more conservative in my investing, but when I look back at it, I've definitely gotten more conservative, right? I've definitely not willing to take some of the risks I was willing to take a decade ago, right? I'm definitely not willing to throw it all right out there. And what I mean is, there were times a decade ago where I might buy 10 properties at auction and then figure out in the next 30 days how I was going to go pay for those 10 properties, right? Those are certain things. Like today we keep a large capital reserve, right? And so I've gotten more conservative over the years, even though we aggressively buy, right? I say aggressively buy, and I have to caveat that what does aggressively buying means? It means we're working at buying under market, off market. We're working on buying pre-foreclosures, right? When it comes to farmland, we take a grassroots effort to get to know farmers, to understand them, right? To find farms with huge upside, right? We're aggressive buyers. But at the same time, the kind of risk I was willing to take a decade ago, right? I'm just not willing to do. And so what I don't understand is these companies got more and more money. How did they not get smarter and smarter about their calculated risks, right? I love being a risk taker. I love investing into a deal and seeing what it's going to come. It's the coolest thing in the world to me. But at the same time, I think I've gotten madder and madder at losses over the years, and more irritated at losses over the years. So the calculating the risk becomes much more important to me, right? And knowing the upside, downside, middle side, all the different ways, right? With properties is important in every single investment we make. And so I want to know the worst case scenario in every single scenario. So if there's a 2008 crash, I know what I'm dealing with before I even go into it.
Yeah. Now I know I've known you for a long time, and over the last couple of events that we had for RADD that I've emceed, I've watched your interaction with the actual inner circle members and the people who are attending. And I'm just going to ask you opinion. Is your, let's say, your more cautious approach to aggressive investing based upon your concern to make sure you're protecting all those people, your flock?
The responsibility gets heavier. When students turned into investors with us, when our students said, "Hey, Dutch, put your money where your mouth is, invest with us," and I that responsibility, saying yes to that, changed the dynamic, right? I mean, my brother Dory didn't work for the company back then. My brother Brent didn't work for the company back then. My brother-in-law Vince didn't work for the company back then, right? And I look at my former business partner, Randall. His son Michael works for the company, right? And he did work for the company back then. But at the same time, this responsibility to the RADD tribe, right, and with our team and employees has grown significantly. We gave out 14 scholarships, right, for the RADD Scholarship Foundation, and that it's changing the game, right? And I'm not, my family will tell you I'm harder on the family that works for me than I am anybody else in the company. But at the same time, they're all family, right? And the inner circle members, they're all family, and so the responsibility is absolutely heavier to shepherd the whole group. But it doesn't take away from good investing though. And that's the thing, is you can make good investments and still be smart. You can still dot your I's and cross your T's. And that's the thing I think a lot of people mess up is when they want to make higher returns, they take wild risks. They make decisions too fast, and they don't calculate the worst case scenario. And it's like when I lend money to a family member, right? I say, here's this money lent to a family member, and in my mind, if I never see it again, it's gone. Right. Yeah. And then when it comes back, it comes back. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Right. Doesn't mean with that family member, if it doesn't come back, that there's not a new set of boundaries and rules with them, because there is. But at the same time, I've already calculated the worst case scenario. Right. So for me, same thing with every investment we make. I've already calculated what's the worst thing that can happen. I mean, we've had property houses stolen, literally stolen. Right. Defrauded deeds, completely stolen. Right. I've calculated for that. It's 18 months to us. That's 18 months of legal fees. 18 months of getting the property back. It may be suing a title company who made a mistake, right? That's part of the game, but we've already calculated those challenges, and that's why there's insurance, right?
Yeah. So the people listening to us right now, who are, let's say, and one of the things I know you are absolutely adamant about, and that is, if you really want to change the game, you've got to get educated.
Yep.
You've got to do your homework. You've got to just don't stick your head in the sand. Just figure out what you need to do to make things really work for you and your family. I know Money Shackles really covers that quite a bit. So people out there who are listening to us right now who
here's a good one. So Bob Mears, right, works for us, right? And the other day I said to Bob, I said you're really smart. I said, but you're not educated, right? And we were joking back and forth, right? And I said, you haven't been through 3 market downturns before, right? I said, you haven't been through, a seller who's coming back and said, I sold you the property, right? But they weren't actually the seller. They were somebody else, right? Impostoring a seller, right? He hasn't been through dealing with an HOA, right? Who decides to suddenly sue because you're not mowing your lawn, right? He hasn't been through some of those experiences. And so I said, these are things, no matter how smart you are, you haven't experienced yet. And so like for me, the first step is always, right, get your knowledge. Get your education, right? And it's not just the tradition, because I've met plenty of people with degrees, right? And I have a degree, and I'm happy that I do, but I've met plenty of idiots who have degrees, right? I've met PhDs that are absolutely not smart when it comes to doing business and running a business and operating a business and making investments, right? And I guarantee you there are companies that lost tens of millions, well, 500 million plus, $1.7 billion plus, right? That had PhDs and economists, right? Telling them what to invest in and how to approach investing, and they're using AI and all these fancy things. But like, if you don't have street smarts, you don't have street smarts at the end of the day. But I like the both. I like you combined the experience, the street smarts with the knowledge, right? And chasing the right knowledge, right? For me, it wasn't my college education, right? That if I didn't play probably baseball, right, that tethered me to finishing school, because I was just an entrepreneur even in college, right? For me, that wasn't what made me an entrepreneur. It was first time I made money, I just reinvested into knowledge, and then I made more money, and then I reinvested into knowledge, and I kept doing it again and again, and then this compounding effect started to happen where I went from somebody wanting to gain knowledge to somebody who is gaining experience, right, on top of the knowledge, and it's those two combined together that makes a big difference.
Yeah, the real question that is going to be on people's minds is, why is RADD the right smart choice for me when it comes to being able to leverage? In other words, I don't have the time. I have a job, I make money, I have a business, but I've got money and I want to invest it. Why RADD?
Hold on, before we go there, right? Right? So Erin has her computer over here, and she's like putting some quotes together and stuff, right? And so let's really introduce Erin, right, to our podcast trap. Why don't we grab her computer and we'll share these cool ass quotes that she's sharing, right, on the screen, right? Go ahead, hand her computer to Ron. We'll share it with everybody, right? So she said, street smarts plus book smarts equals fire, and art and science of real estate investing equals fire. So those are really good ones, right? I give credit where credit is due, right? I've said ignorance on fire makes more money than knowledge on ice. Erin said street smarts plus book smarts equals fire. So I like it. Give you credit where credit is due, right? Now, how long do we keep Erin, right, as a part of the podcast without actually showing anybody what she looks like? Because now people are going to start getting curious. Who's Erin, right? I remember for a while I listened to Joe Rogan's podcast with Jamie. I was listening to his, I'd hear Jamie and different. I was like, what the hell does Jamie look like? And then I watched a couple of his podcasts, and I actually, for whatever reason, didn't see Jamie on those particular podcasts. I was like, what the hell does this dude look like? So no offense, Jamie. I mean, it just wasn't that. No, I'm just kidding. But I think we're a wrap, right?
Yeah,
I think we're good. I mean, RADD. I love RADD, right?
Well,
but at the end of the day, right? I want people to get this knowledge.
I want to just get that last question answered.
All right.
Encourage people. Why RADD?
I mean, we're in it with you, right? We're gonna give you every piece of tool, every information that we can to see you go succeed, right? And if you invest with us, great. If you don't, go out and succeed. Go out and be an investor. I don't believe in competition. I believe in collaboration, right? I believe people who don't understand competition the correct way will fail, right? The greatest athletes in the world were produced by the other great athletes, right? Jordan was produced, right, by Bird and Magic, right? If there's no Bird and Magic, there is no Jordan. And that it's just, he can't achieve those exceptional new heights, right? For me, I look at, the great companies that are out there, right? That are investing in real estate. I invited them to come speak at our next conference, right? I went and said, what are the top real estate investment companies in America? I said, all right, I didn't know some of them. I never met some of them. I said, let me go invite them to come speak at my conference. Let me go, let them share investing knowledge with our tribe, with our students and stuff. And you know, that's different, because when I first got in real estate education, it was like a lot of this, right? And a lot of alphas, right? A lot of white dudes, right? And then granted, we're two white guys here sharing. I have a little more color than you, but at the same time,
Everybody's got a little bit more color than me.
But at the same time, right? Like, you know, I joke about that because those of you who don't know, I'm in a mixed race marriage. So is my business partner, Amy, right? And so, like, for us, you know, it's one of those things, like that headbutting and that mine versus yours, like that's weak. And that's why a lot of those people disappear over the years. It's weakness. The fear of competition is weakness. Absolutely. So for me, no success can exist in a vacuum. And I'm going to laugh because Erin put that on the computer too. So it's really good. I'll give her credit for it. But I mean, we're in it with them. We're going to give them every tool they can to go succeed. If they want to invest with us, great. If they don't, great. Right. I mean, if you don't love America, love our troops and soldiers, then don't invest with us. Right. It's always a first statement about RADD. Right. If you're a know-it-all or an asshole, don't invest with us either. So with that said, we're going to wrap.
Awesome. Good job.
Right, good stuff, brother.